Hello, everyone. Good to see you for this great books course as we convene in February for my final lecture on Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra, one of the great works in Western philosophy, and one of the great books that we need to consider, particularly a time such as ours. You'll remember, those of you who were joining last time, that I spoke about the life and overall body of work of Nietzsche. He was born in 1844 in Germany. He was a prodigy, although for the duration of his life, he was very ill and racked with pain and succumbed toward the end of his life to mental dementia almost, and ended up in an asylum where he spent the final days, and he died in about 1900. The probably most eventful occasion of Nietzsche's life, which was one of the proximate causations of his masterwork, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, came in 1882 when he was 40 years old. I'll just summarize it because I went into detail last time. But that was the year in which he met the beautiful Salome. And along with his friend Paul Ray, he went around Italy and around Europe, the three of them, looking for a place where they could set up a commune where people could live together and write together and talk about politics and the big issues of philosophy and spirituality together. And in the course of those journeys, Nietzsche fell madly in love with Lou Salome, who was a Russian countess and ravishingly beautiful, eloquent, socially graceful, and one of those who was the life of every party. And that must have been such an extraordinary contrast to the very introverted, very shy, very frail Nietzsche. And of course, he fell madly in love. And 3 times he proposed that Lou Salome marry him, and 3 times she said no. And after the 3rd refusal, she and his friend Paul Ray left in the night from the lodge in which they were staying. And Nietzsche woke up the next morning and no one was there. And he went into a state of deep depression and loneliness and alienation from the self. And his sister and mother urged him to go to Italy and just relax by some of the beautiful lakes and mountains of northern Italy. So he went near Rapallo in Italy and got a little cabin, which you can still see to the present day. And as he was walking along the lake one day, he had a vision. And the vision appeared in his head like a pyramidal shaped black stone. And from the stone came a voice I am Zarathustra. Right. And Nietzsche scurried back to his little cottage and in about 10 days wrote out the first quarter of the book. And then over the next 2 years, in kind of frenzied writing sessions over about 10 days, he wrote Thus Spoke Zarathustra. And that's what we're going to discuss today. I want to start by first making a comment or two on who Zarathustra was. Zoroaster is the way he's referred to often in many texts. Zarathustra is the German name and the Persian name. Zoroaster and Zoroastrians is the Western sort of translation of Zarathustra, but they're essentially the same thing. Zarathustra was, by all accounts, one of the great avatars. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have all been fundamentally shaped by Zarathustra. Their dating of his life is uncertain, but it is generally thought that he lived at the earliest levels of the Axial age in the 8th and 7th century BC. Some believe that it is an older date. He's shrouded in mystery, but he lived in Persia. He was a precocious young man. At the age of 30, he was walking by a stream and he came to a tree, and there he had a great epiphany. And that epiphany illumined for him a great truth, one of the most seminal truths in all of history, that fundamentally our ethical choices shape our lives, shape the world, and determine our fate in the afterlife. Before Zarathustra, before Zoroaster, there was no clearly defined notion of ethics. What we had in the early stages of human development were shamanic practices, rituals. We had offerings to the gods. Most of the ancient cultures were very attentive to the offerings to the gods, but there wasn't a body of work religiously codified, like, say, the Ten Commandments or the Analects of Confucius or the Gospels of Jesus, that lay out ethical living. Zarathustra was the first one, as far as we know, that articulated that our lives are essentially battlegrounds between the light and dark dimensions. The light dimension, Ahura Mazda; the dark dimension, Ahriman. Saruman in Lord of the Rings was taken from Ahriman. And so, as one lives one's life, all the choices we make are either, said Zarathustra, illuminating truth or engaging in falsehood. That's the ultimate division around ethics. Is something true? If it's true, then say it. If it's not true, don't say it. And it is one's orientation to truth that determines one's capacity to live ethically. It's the truth, said Jesus many centuries later, that sets us free. The Persian culture was shaped by Zarathustra. The Persians, at the core of their culture, had the saying that to speak truth and shoot the arrow straight, that is the good life. That is the good life. So when Zarathustra appeared to Nietzsche, he challenged Nietzsche to speak truth. And that's what Nietzsche sought to do in this masterwork. And it was in his masterwork that he set forth that when one orients oneself not by religious custom, not by social covenants, not by ideology or politics or conventional wisdom. If one sought truth, one became a super person, an ubermensch, Superman. And although this concept was later completely taken over and degraded by the Nazis, what Nietzsche was talking about in Thus Spoke Zarathustra is the true nature of what happens to someone when they live according to truth. So that's what I would like to consider with you all today. How do we understand truth, and how do we become what Joe Dispenza would call super normal? How do we activate our human potential? So what I'd like to do is read some of the beginning lines and pages from Nietzsche's work. And I'll make some commentary as we go along, and then we will open it up to questions and comments. And I'd like all the students to prepare their questions when we finish. The book starts out by saying, when Zarathustra was 30, he left his home and the lake of his home and went into the mountains. Here he had an enjoyment of his spirit and his solitude, and he did not weary of it for 10 years. So for 10 years, he was up in the mountains, enjoying the beatific silence of solitude. And then it says, his heart turned. And one morning, He rose with the dawn and he stepped before the sun. The sun was considered by the Zoroastrians as the symbol of truth, the symbol of Ahura Mazda, the light, because the light is truth. God is light. The light is love. God is love. And the sun shines the brightest of all the stars. So Zoroaster gets up at dawn, goes out of his cave, and faces the sun. And spoke thus. Great star, what would your happiness be if you had not one of those for whom you shine? You have come up here to my cave for 10 years. You would have grown weary of your light and of this journey without me, my eagle and my serpent. Behold, I am now weary of all my wisdom, like a bee that has gathered too much honey. I need hands outstretched to take it. To that end, I must descend now from the mountain into the depths. I must go down. Thus began Zarathustra's down going. I want to pause there for a moment because that's seminal for Nietzsche. If you think of Christianity, for example, the predominant religion in Western civilization, everything is oriented around believing in Jesus and then going to heaven when you die. That's also common throughout Islam and much of Judaism. This life is transitory. The eternal, the transcendent, is what is important. Plato always taught that it is the transcendent that is important. Even in the East, the Buddha, it was nirvana. This life is full of suffering. The body, pleasures of the flesh, sexuality, riches, power, fame are all for naught. What's important is to align yourself with the spirit that you cannot see and transcend up the ladder of love and experience true beauty. Nietzsche said, no, that is not the point of existence as he understood it from Zarathustra. That the anvil, which provides the basis of all human thought, word, and deed, is in the here and the now, on this earth, in this life, with this body, with all the emotions and intellectual pursuits and physical appetites known to humankind. So when Nietzsche and Zarathustra start the whole work by coming down from the mountain to the valley, Nietzsche is closing out all of Western philosophy, all of Western religion, and saying everything needs to be turned upside down. We need to go down to the earth to find out who we are. heaven is a fantasy of religious elites seeking to control our lives. In other works, Nietzsche spoke at length in Twilight of the Gods and various other works about how Judaism and Christianity and Islam were what he called slave religions. They're basically enslaving people by telling them all the things they can't do and making them feel bad about their bodies, bad about their eros. And if they only would deny all that and believe in X, Y, or Z, then they go to heaven when they die. And that's the mentality, said Nietzsche, of slaves. There's got to be a completely different way. And that is the pathway down from the heights into the sanctity of our bodies, into the sanctity of the earth. For it is there, as animals, that we find true happiness and true fulfillment. It's the downgoing of Zarathustra that is essential for the path to find the pathway of the superperson, the superman, the ubermensch. So Zarathustra goes down the mountain and he meets an old man. And the old man says, "Are you going to carry your fire into the valley? I remember you from 10 years ago. You've become more like a child, Zarathustra," says the old man. That's very important. I'll come to that in a moment. Why are you coming down? Zarathustra answers, "Because I love humankind." And the saint laughed at Zarathustra. "Don't go down to the men. They'll just revile you. Stay in the forest. Go rather, not to humans, go to the animals. They understand more deeply." And the saint said, "I make songs and I sing to them. And when I make songs, I laugh and I weep and I mutter and I praise God." And then the old man and Zarathustra both laughed together as two boys laugh. But when Zarathustra was alone, he spoke thus to his heart: "Could it be possible? This old saint has not yet learned in his forest that God is dead." That's what Nietzsche understood. And I believe that's what caused his mental illness. He couldn't contain in his frail psyche the enormity of the reality that the God of the Jews and the Christians and the Muslims was dead. It was no longer serving humanity. It was no longer capable of leading modernity into the kind of value proposition that was necessary to guide humanity in an age of technology. And Nietzsche saw that after him comes the deluge. It's an extraordinary thing. The prophetic vision of Nietzsche. He makes a point that I want to dwell on because it's so essential in terms of Zarathustra's core teachings to Nietzsche. And I think is extremely important for us today as we consider how we live authentic lives in a highly complex world. When Zarathustra arrived at the nearest of the towns lying against the forest, he found in that very place many people assembled in the market square. Zarathustra spoke thus to the people: I teach you the Superman. Those were his first words. I teach you the ubermensch, the superperson. Man is something that should be overcome. What have you done to overcome him? All creatures hitherto have created something beyond themselves. And do you want to be the ebb of this great tide and return to the animals rather than to overcome man? What is the ape to man? A laughingstock or a painful embarrassment. And just so shall man be to the Superman, a laughingstock or a painful embarrassment. Man is a rope fastened between animal and Superman, a rope over an abyss, a dangerous going across, a dangerous wayfaring, a dangerous looking back, a dangerous shuddering and staying still. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal. What can be loved in man is that he is a going across and a down going. I love those who do not know how to live except their lives be a down going, for those are the ones who are going across. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not a goal. What can be loved in man is that he is a going across and a going down. A rope over an abyss between animal and Superman. So let's pause here again and just take this in. We are not complete, says Nietzsche, says Zarathustra. We are creatures in formation. We are animals evolving into something more. We are halfway to where we want to go. And so philosophy, spirituality cannot, says Nietzsche, be the 10 Commandments or the 2 Great Commandments or the 5 pillars of Islam. That's the slave mentality. True spirituality is always yearning and striving to be a rope across a deep abyss between here and what we are now and there, what we can become. Nietzsche was really the first philosopher to take in evolutionary processes and the notion of becoming as a more fundamental category than being. Most of Judeo-Christianity and Islam, most of the Greek philosophers, Plato, Aristotle, all thought that the basic category of existence was being. You know, a rock is a rock. A goat is a goat. Person is a person. And that life was eternally static in a world that fundamentally never changed because the seasons and the cycles just did things over and over and over and over again. And Nietzsche said, no. Every instant of every day, change, not constancy, governs. And therefore, ethics and spirituality needs to be that capacity to cultivate within oneself the fortitude and the will, capacity to be more than who you are right now. And that is the superordinate individual. So I'd like to comment further on this because this is really the seminal notion in this work. How does one become a super person? How does one activate the human potential within? And Nietzsche lays out over the course of the work stages of development. And he uses three images: a camel, a lion, and a baby, a child, as the pathway to becoming a superordinate individual, a super person, an ubermensch. You start out, he says, as a camel. Camel is a beast of burden. It is particularly suited to carry heavy loads on its back. It can go great distances without water. It seems habituated to servitude. That's how we start, says Nietzsche. Beasts of burden, carrying the conventional wisdom, not doing anything that would give us pleasure, not violating the Sabbath in any way, keeping Torah, making the Hajj, being good little Jews, good little Christians, and good little Muslims all. And we're burdened. We don't really know why we're doing it, but that's what we were taught. And so that's what we do, even though our lives are full of distractions, unfulfilled desires, distorted yearnings, and alienation. And then something happens. And we go into a realization that there's light outside the cave. Nietzsche was very familiar with Plato's allegory of the cave. And we're spending our lives looking at the back of the cave, those shadows on the back of the caves put up by the elites that are governing us, the religious leaders, the political leaders, the corporate leaders that want us to buy iPhones and, you know, believe in Jesus and be full of rectitude in everything that we do. Well, once you realize that you're not a camel and that you can start looking at the sun and escape from the cave, you become, says Nietzsche, like a lion. You become ferocious about the exploration. And all of a sudden you wake up and you have all the enthusiasm, all the exuberance of a new convert, as they say. You become a lion. And it's so true. As I look back over my life and observe others, you know, when people wake up from the dream state and they exit the cave, they may have taken some LSD or some psychedelic drug. They may have fallen in love passionately. They may have gotten an illness or an accident. They may have had a near-death experience. They may have met an extraterrestrial, seen a UFO. Something happens, and they wake up. And the world is never the same again. Most of us on this call today, I would say, have probably woken up and are ferocious about seeking the truth. We may spend our whole lifetime, says Nietzsche, as lions, and that's worthy. But if you want to become a super person, a lion won't get you there. You have to become a child. You have to surrender all the books and teachings and constraints of the camel, all the ferociousness for the light of the lion, and simply laugh and dance and play in the innocence of a child. If you can do that, if you can become a child while you're an adult, you can become super empowered to be who you are. You know, I've often reflected on that, you know, Goethe, many psychotherapists and analysts, you know, in the present day, talk about the power of play, the power of laughter, the power of innocence. And so in Nietzsche's world, as he observed life and as he began to channel these teachings of Zarathustra, he became aware that ethics is not the Ten Commandments. Ethics is ultimately an aesthetic. It's art. The Ten Commandments and all the constraints of religion go to the world of the camel. That's the slave mentality. When you break out anarchistically, egoically. Raw experience becomes one of the norms, and you relentlessly pursue the liberation from becoming a camel. So the life of a lion is inherently promiscuous because it's full of the pursuit of all the raw experiences that you were denied as a camel. But that's not what animates the superpower within. What animates that is you go through all that process and you begin to realize that that too is all for naught. Like the Buddha, after the 7 years of wandering, after he left the palace, when he was also around 30 years old, just like Jesus, just like Zarathustra, just like many young people who changed history. You become innocent. And so that means that life needs to be lived as an artistic impulse, understanding that we are of the earth, we're animals, gifted animals, but animals nevertheless. And with each act and each choice, we're sculpting our evolutionary development into the future. And the most effective way to do that is to play and to laugh and to dance our lives to the fullest extent possible. In the process, we're going to contravene many of the laws and regulations that keep life orderly for the camels. And therefore, there will be a dialectic between you and your culture. And you might get hurt. But if you persist, you will activate the superpower within yourself to become who you were destined to be if you would only leave the camel and with the ferociousness of a lion, search out the light, and then once found, turn into a child. I think I'll leave it there today and solicit your comments. And then we'll bring the session to a close. And next month, we will continue our lectures. So I want to get, well, there we go. Shushu has got her hand up, and I want to hear from the other students. So Shushu, I'll, let's see, allow to talk. There you go. And I can even promote you to panelist. So you can open your video if you would like, or you can just talk because you now have audio. So Shushu, you're on. Oh, Shusha doesn't seem to be able to connect. So I'll go with Michelle Blair. Oh, Michelle's here. That's nice. So Michelle, you're now able to talk. And if you want to open your video, you can do that too, or you can just use your audio, whatever you're comfortable with.
Okay.
There's Michelle. Cool. There you are.
Here we are. Oh, hello, Jim. Hello,
Hello,
everyone.
my dear.
I
How
was
are you? How's Texas?
It's still here.
By the way, everybody, before Michelle talks, she just completed one of the most extraordinary PhD dissertations I've seen in a very long time on the cowgirl, the archetype of the cowgirl within Texas, the Texas culture. It was really, really brilliant. So Michelle knows a lot about going from a camel to a lion to a child.
I think Nietzsche would have liked the cowgirls.
I'm
I
sure he
do.
would have.
I do, because the cowgirl is all about her relationship with land and animals. And yeah, the instinctual life is really our spiritual life. And I thought when I first heard about Nietzsche and his superhuman, I kept thinking about Clark Kent, dry up in the sky, about being superhuman. And then as I realized getting into the work, I said, oh, no, 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 it's ultra human. It's to be fully human. And I think that we don't know, because we've been so tranced by this Salvinistic, Papa God up in the sky, that we have really cut ourselves off from what it really means to be a child.
Exactly.
And that is the connection with nature, because we are nature itself. And it's not just about even knowing about nature, it's being into nature. It's about the spirit of the place, that I was born at this time in this land, and to connect with it so fully that it reminds me of the mysteries. The mystery schools were not about escaping your life. It was about being fully in your life with that illumination, because you have this organic light that you are now, you're co-evolving with. And I think that we always think that our power is coming from something that's outside of ourselves, instead of our sensorial, this divine intelligence that we're made from the same substance. And I was so grateful that I got to study the indigenous culture of Texas, because it really helps me understand that truth moves. That truth is not, okay, I gotta look up in the Bible how to deal with a rattlesnake. It doesn't work that way. Because if you're in touch with your deep instinctual life, then you can discern and discriminate when someone's trying to take away your power, because that makes you powerful when you're instinctual. And so I just want to make that comment, because I'm so passionate about that aspect of life, because so many people think that instincts are to be overcome, instead of that is the language of your soul. And when you do that, you can get into a much deeper ecology, a sacred ecology, because now you understand that we're co-evolving together in this process of life that's so beautiful and alive. Anyway, so thank you for letting me share that aspect.
Well, I think you're making such a powerful point. The animals live by instinct in nature. Nature is naturally instinctual. And it's our reason and our culture that cuts us off from that and turns us from children into camels. There's actually a metamorphosis that goes on in our psyche as we lose our instinctual connectivity with the natural processes of life, till there's something kind of distorted about a camel. They say that a camel is a horse made by committee. So when you go through those distortions, you've got to break out of that and reconnect with the instinctual. But just while you're up, and since you just wrote the thesis, and by the way, Michelle is going to be offering some lectures this year on which is the book that you're going to be.
Oh, The Earth Has a Soul by Jung.
Oh,
So
Michelle is going to be one of our faculty this year, everybody. But so speak to us just a little bit, Michelle, about the cowgirl and instinct.
Okay, well, the cowgirl is born from really the pioneer woman. And the pioneer woman, when she comes over from Europe, she she lands in a frontier, a land that she has. There's no book to describe what it's like. You've got the native peoples, you have rattlesnakes, you have all these conditions, and she's bringing with her all the Victorian ideals of her religion. And, you know, even if you're, whether or not you believe in a salvation or a Judeo-Christian, whatever, it's in your psyche. So she comes over in her corset, and she has to throw it off in order to deal with all the uncertainty, all the mystery, all the things that she's never seen or heard. She has none of her family or her support system. And so she has to bring online this part of herself that's been atrophied. And I think that this is a great image for today, because here today, we don't even realize that. We think, oh, we're so lucky. We're the most advanced culture, our Western culture. Yet our lifestyles have cut us off. Anything technology cuts us off from our instincts. Living inside, living in LED lights or fluorescent lights, or all those things we don't even have our rhythms. People can't sleep. They're not grounded. Their feet never even touch the ground. Well, the cowgirl, she's in the earth. She has to say, you know what, I'm going to protect my children. I got to figure out, well, how am I going to even, grow a crop? I don't have any cups, so I guess I'll have to take some squash. So she's and dry it out to make a cup. So she is living in a perpetual state of creativity. So now her religion has become the religion of nature. And then as masculine values come into the culture, because they're called the colonization, then you start to see the corset starts to get back on, taking her back. And now she becomes an icon for something that is completely opposite of the feminine, because it's these masculine values that want to in some way control and diminish the feminine aspect of relatedness, our relatedness to each other, to our own soul, to ourselves. So I think that this is what we're seeing now in our cultures. How do we discern and discriminate truth? Because we're told by media, technology, the camels, how we should live. And if we don't, we're going to hell. I mean, like you start to think about it. Is that really what we're designed to be?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
We are not camels.
we're not camels. We are nature itself, and it's beautiful. And when we align with our true self-love, and we can then love, not in the narcissistic way, but then in a way that makes life rich and vital and regenerative. But it's for me, it's taken a long time. I had to have a tragic event happen in my life to wake me out of my trance. And then I went to the old style of, oh my God, I'm praying to, this victim perpetrator ideology of a salvation, like, please help me. And then it never dawned on me that it resided within my own nous, my own self, my own divine intelligence, and that faculty that over time and time, you start to say, well, that's not working so well because I have anxiety every day. Well, I think most of our anxiety is because we don't have that instinctual part that Nietzsche is always talking about, the earth, going back to the earth. So, like I said, I think you like the cowgirl.
Well, Michelle, thank you for
If I take too much time.
raising your hand, and look forward to your book on Jung in a couple months' time.
Thank you for letting me share.
With pleasure, with pleasure. Okay, everyone. Anyone else that wants to ask a question or make a comment? If not,
Yeah.
we'll bring it to a close, I think, for today. I've got to go over to the Senate across the street for a meeting at Senator Schumer's office in a few minutes as I work on the ongoing disclosure of UFOs by the US government. It's a very exciting moment in time. In fact, just before we close, I want to show people something just to give you a, where did it go? Oh, here we go. Hey, everybody. Just a tweak at the end. Take a look at these photographs. These are CT scans of bodies that have been found in Nazca, Peru from 1,000 years ago. According to DNA tests, they're 70% human, 30% alien, with 3 fingers on their hands. They're the Greys. And here's one. You can see eggs in the abdomen. And what I'm working on today is how Ubiquity University and New Paradigm Institute can help arrange getting a couple of these bodies into the United States for scientific testing. Because if we can show that what people are experiencing, you know, in terms of Steven Spielberg's the ET Come Home, the ETs, they're actually found real bodies and hybrids, so that there's been crossbreeding. That would be a huge scientific event for humankind to realize that not only are we not alone now, we haven't been alone, folks, for a very long time. I tell you, you don't want to be a camel any longer than you have to be. It's wonderful being here. I just love what I'm doing. And I feel more and more of the superordinate coming through me as I'm becoming more enveloped in the UFO disclosure, because there's no other way to approach this than as a child, looking out over the vast cosmos and just taking in that we are not alone. And to be shown these photographs and been asked to help facilitate the entry of these, some of the scientists from Peru and some of the bodies to come in for testing is an extraordinary adventure. It makes me feel like Tom Sawyer, makes me feel like a little boy, full of adrenaline and goosebumps. And I think that's to some degree how I'm experiencing the child within. And so I'll leave it at that. I'll have more updates. I'm talking about it on Humanity Rising a lot, but I'll have more updates next month for sure. But thank you all so much. Very good to see you, Michelle, as always.
Thank you.
And we'll have you with us in a few months' time. Thank you, everybody. Bye for now.